one of the cool things about working with you guys is that a lot of times we're making changes and we make a mistake and you guys see it before we see it. Even though we're right there making the change. Like, okay, we made the change, we deploy something, and then Paige is like, hey guys, there's something going on here.
Throughout doing that load testing phase, we were able to get the right size so that they have enough power to handle what their site demands are for the licensing and for the support, but not be overspending at the same time.
I mean, this type of problem would have been a big problem if you're talking about a hosting that is not willing to go in there and dig and find a specific reason why you're having an issue.
It's a perfect opportunity for them to say, oh no, you need more hardware. We got to double or triple your spend on your hardware, right? It's a chance for them to bump things.
Right.
We operate a little differently. We want to solve what that root problem is because it actually, in the long run, it's just easier to support.
So really, I have nothing but very good things to say, and it's mostly because of support.
Okay, we'll get started. Today we are joined by Alex from Rocket Genius. Alex, welcome to the podcast webinar, whatever we're calling this, the video case study.
All right, very nice. Glad to be here, Sean.
Great. So this is the third one of these we've done. I'll just kind of tee up the conversation for the people that are tuning in for the first time here. So what this is it's a video case study. We're going to talk through some challenges that you guys have had with us and how we address those challenges. And the goal here is really to just surface anything that might be useful for the folks listening, to see how we dealt with the various challenges, to see how we operate, and just to get a feel for what this is all about. And hopefully they'll learn a little bit about your business in the meantime. And Gravity Forms, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, but I can tell you I've been a longtime user of Gravity Forms. You guys have built something that's extremely cool because it's like a platform on WordPress. It's arguably the best form builder thing that's out there, but it's also more than that. People have built survey tools and all kinds of integrations. So it's a really cool product. And we're excited. We're happy to host you guys and excited to have you on the show. So maybe you can talk, how do you describe Gravity Forms?
So Gravity Forms is, in a nutshell, a form builder tool. We designed it thinking that would be used for people to develop contact forms. And then this thing kind of transformed, like you said, into a platform where you see all kinds of different types of forms that people are developing. So basically anything that requires user interaction on a website, people are using Gravity Forms for. We have a lot of what we call add-ons, which are extensions to the basic product that either adds functionality or integrates Gravity Forms with third-party services, like MailChimp, Stripe, PayPal, and things like that. And on top of that, we have a very nice API with hooks and classes and filters that people can use to extend Gravity Forms to do pretty much whatever they want.
Yeah.
So basically,
we actually use it at Pagely pretty extensively. I set up a tool for our sales team where on every call we're taking notes, and we use the conditional logic in the Gravity Form. So depending on what they are and who they're doing, or who they are and what they're doing, we can then pop out other flyouts and get very detailed in terms of structured note taking. And then that pipes it through Zapier, and we do a bunch of stuff in the CRM. So it's really super powerful.
Nice. Yeah, very nice.
Cool. Well, so I think what I'll do, and then also on the call is our fearless head of DevOps, Armand Zakarian. Thanks for joining, Armand.
Anytime.
So what we're going to do now is I've got kind of a timeline here. So I think the best thing to do is just kind of go back and chronologically step through the various challenges and solutions that we've done with you guys. So so let's start. So you guys became a customer, it looks like, in August of 2014, which is actually before I started at Pagely. But we brought you over. And it looks like we brought two different sites over. We brought gravityforms.com over, and then shortly thereafter, we brought gravityhelp.com.
Yeah, so the way that worked was, we've had a relationship with, Pagely for a while before we even became, customers. But we've always had two sites. We had our marketing site, gravityforms.com, and we've had our support site, gravityhelp.com, that handled support requests and also handled license key validation, API. the gravityforms.com site is way simpler. It's just a marketing site. It has some static content, simple. Gravity Help site, on the other hand, much more complicated, has a lot more traffic because all the installations are pinging this site to validate license keys. On top of people coming in for documentation and people coming in to request support. So what we did is we just moved gravityforms.com to Pagely. And we kept gravityhelp.com with our existing hosting just to kind of test the waters and see if things would work with Pagely. So we did that, and it was a great experience. We liked it. Performance was unbelievable. And then we were like, okay, so now it's time to move gravityhelp.com, which that was a big deal. It was a big site. There's a lot of traffic, and we were already having some sort of performance, some beginnings of performance issues on the hosting that we were, and we had a lot of concerns.
Let's step back to the initial need that prompted you to seek us out. Like, what was the issue that you were experiencing with your previous host that made you want to bring gravityforms.com to Pagely?
So gravityforms.com, it was not, we were not having issues. We just wanted to, like I said, we knew, Josh, we wanted to give Pagely basically a chance. We wanted to keep, things within the WordPress community, and we wanted to support, what Pagely was doing. And that was the main motivation behind gravityforms.com.
Okay, cool.
Now, after we've gone through that experience, then gravityhelp.com, that was an actual need. We were having problems with our existing hosting. We didn't feel like we're getting the level of support that we wanted, and we were comparing against the support that we got with gravityforms.com, and we're like, man, we gotta make this change. And so that's what drove the second move, moving our more complex, more intense traffic sites.
Got it. Well, we're glad for the charity on the first one, and that we earned it on the second one. So
that's right.
So let's step through. So we brought the site over, we migrated it, and then it looks like a couple days later, the first real need that came up is you guys wanted SSH. You're using VaultPress for backups. It sounds like you were using some like a database desktop inspection tool and PHP Storm IDE. So you had these tools that needed to use SSH, and we enabled that. We do SSH a little bit differently in that we don't use the login password combination, so we use the public key. Right. Armand, can you just talk about maybe briefly why we do it that way? Like, why not the login password approach?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's more secure for your user if it doesn't have a password on it, because someone trying to brute force it will never get the password right. So they actually have to have a valid SSH key to get in. And most plugins, or rather desktop applications out there, like for IDEs or database management kind of apps, they can all use SSH keys in your SSH tunnel configuration. And it's a lot easier for us to store public SSH keys, and it's easier to handle than it is for us to store and handle passwords. So, I mean, from a security point of view, we really don't want to touch passwords and handle the way to store them and all that stuff. It can be done, and we know how to do it. We just prefer not to, just so that if there is ever some sort of breach, then that's one less thing that would be able to be gained. So the SSH key approach is really the way to go. Cool. And of course, when you make an SSH key on your side, you can secure that with a passphrase, and we recommend doing that. And so it's basically the same kind of deal. It's just a different way of authenticating.
It looked like from that ticket that the VaultPress specifically, like the PHP IDE thing, the PHP Storm and SQL Pro both worked with it, but it sounded like for VaultPress that it did need a login password. They didn't have the ability to support the public key. So I know we did something there. We were able to make it work, basically, but we prefer not to go that route, it sounds like.
Yeah, this is also really far back. It is possible that maybe they support it now as well.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the newest Vaultpress help page, and they do support SSH keys now. So,
Cool.
We're looking at a ticket from 2014.
Right. Right. All right. Well, and so then we've got like this period, it looks like a year and a half where there's basically no tickets. So presumably everything was running smoothly for a year and a half.
That's right.
Yeah. And then, so then what was, okay, let's see. Okay. So this is something I want to talk about. So in March of 2016, so we host your sites, but then we're also working pretty closely because, you know, we do have thousands of customers and a bunch of people using Gravity Forms. One person specifically, actually the episode that's just before you, we just interviewed them. They have a huge scale that they operate at, you know, hundreds of thousands of pages, a lot of them with lead forms on them and, you know, bots and all kinds of traffic hitting it. So they are this edge case in that, you know, they're using Gravity Forms extensively and getting massive amounts of traffic to it. So issues which might not normally rear their head do for this person. And I think what's interesting is on this ticket that I'm referring to in March of 16, we're able to actually pipe some feedback back to you guys. And, you know, we had patched the Gravity Forms for this particular client to be able to get rid of this one query that was screwing things up, and then pipe that feedback back to you guys so that you can then make a filter to disable it. So it's an interesting interplay there where it's not, we're actually also not just your hosting provider, but we're helping like resolve some of the actual product.
And that's part of why it makes so much sense for us to be with Pagely. It's because we speak the same language. You know our product, and we all know WordPress. So every time, you know, we ask for support or we need something, we are right there. You know, we're talking the same language. Whereas before, it would take, you know, 3 or 4 conversations before we even start, you know, clicking on, oh, that's what he means. So it's a much quicker and much more, you know, pleasant, you know, experience.
Nice. So, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. It looks like in September of 17 now. So we're about another year and a half. So this is where there's a new site launch. So presumably this is the licensing server that we're talking about. That we brought over. So tell me specifically, so you were hitting some scaling issues there, it sounded like, with your licensing server at Firehose?
We were hitting some, we were having some issues. We didn't know exactly what the issues were, and we were having some problems with, you know, getting support from them. We had not just scaling issues, we had other types of issues. Where we had a lot of issues where they would just deny, you know, requests from a lot of the clients, you know, based on them thinking that there was, you know, malware or being attacked or something, but there was a lot of false positives. And those were very hard for us to whitelist. You know, we were telling them, hey, these guys are our clients, they're trying to hit our service, and you guys are blocking it. It was to the point that we had to create kind of a proxy server on Bluehost to kind of validate licenses that were blocked by Firehose. They would actually then try to go to Bluehost and validate it through that. And there was, you know, some, you know, that issue and a few other issues on top of, you know, every time we wanted customer support, it would be a battle, basically. So that's what prompted us to make a change.
Got it. Okay, so those issues coupled with the fact that you were getting a good support experience on our side, just you made the decision to bring that over into Pagely.
Yeah. And
it looks like, Armand, maybe you can talk about this. So we did some load testing for them, it sounds like. And here's what's interesting is I only have visibility into Slack right now, or I'm sorry, into the tickets, but there was also some parallel conversations that were taking place in Slack.
Yeah, that's the other awesome thing that Pagely set up for us was, you know, because we knew this was a big deal for us and we had a lot of concerns, and you know we got, you know, set up with a a nice Slack channel that we can just, talk. I would just talk to Armand and we would just brainstorm some things, and it just made the communication so much easier than sending an email back and forth. And we're able to get this, this thing going.
For sure.
Yeah. So this was it's a pretty fun project for me. I was actually involved in this migration and the load testing. And yeah, the Slack channel, we don't just set that up for companies like Rocket Genius. Like any new VPS customer, they feel like that's going to be helpful for the transition, and maybe they have some important things about the site. Maybe the site's not as straightforward. We're more than happy to set it up on a temporary basis for anybody. So Alex shared with us figures about like how much traffic their current server gets, what type of calls they're getting, and provided us with some mock data, like randomized mock data. And we worked together to write some load tests using the tool called Work, W-R-K. And with that tool, you're able to create mock post requests that have different values for the data, and you can say, send it at this level of traffic, this level of concurrency, this many connections, or try to hit this request rate per second. There's other tools out there that do the same thing. The one we use nowadays is called K6. It's made by the Load Impact guys, and it's a little nicer. But yeah, it was basically a matter of trying to get an understanding of what kind of traffic was coming in, and how high the volume of that would be, and standing up a staging copy of the site on Pagely, doing a couple important things like turning off email sending or credit card purchasing because the site wasn't live yet, and doing a little bit of load testing. With each load testing run, collect some important data. We're able to see some metrics on our side, and make some tuning adjustments for the number of PHP workers or the number of Nginx connections, or things like that. And I believe, at the very beginning, before we even knew how it would all work together, we were thinking it might be like a VPS2 and RDS large. Alex wanted to try with VPS1 and RDS medium. And so, throughout doing that load testing phase, we were able to get the right size so that they have enough power to handle what their site demands are for the licensing and for the support, but not be overspending at the same time. So, depending on the hosting company you go with, or if you're just doing it yourself, you might not be putting the database on its own separate resource like an RDS on Amazon, but we do. Every VPS customer has their site running on a separate RDS resource. Whether that's in our shared RDS tier or a private RDS add-on, it's still not running on the actual server that's your VPS. So we have the ability to scale that independently, and one part of the system having a problem is not going to impact the other one. So it's a nice bit of flexibility you get there. So after doing some load testing and some tuning, I think we ended up at VPS1 and an RDS large. So, we got 1 out of 2 in terms of cost savings. Yeah.
We actually tried RDS medium and we had problems. I pushed for it, even though Armand was suggesting RDS large. I was like, man, let's try to do the medium because it's a little cheaper. And then it didn't quite work. Yeah, and then we came back to the large, and then things just worked way better.
What was Armand, I know you mentioned that there was a switch we were able to do for them from the M series to the R series. Can you talk about what that was?
Yeah, the main issue was not really CPU, it was memory usage. So on Amazon, you can pick different types of instances. You can have like a R series, which is memory optimized, that puts more emphasis on more memory allocation for each size of instance. Whereas like the M series is more general purpose. It has a more even blend of CPU and memory. So those are a little bit faster, but they don't have as much RAM. And then the newest that they have is the T3 series, which is kind of the lower cost, burstable, not really made for high performance, but for cost efficiency. So that one is, I think they currently only offer it as a medium. So even if you were to want to get like a T3 instead of the R5, right now I don't think they offer that. But yeah, like you get that flexibility. We can pick the right instance type for within each size. So you don't have to necessarily upgrade to like a RDS extra large to get more memory. We can set you up with an R series instead of an M series kind of deal.
Nice. And so that just contributed to cost savings, like while better suiting their needs because they needed the more memory, but it allowed them to stay on the lower one. Nice.
Yeah, and just, I mean, we host a lot of different companies like Rocket Genius, like sites like Gravity Forms that are doing these kinds of licensing calls, and they have, kind of a large data footprint. Some of them get a private RDS with us. Some of them are fine on the shared tier. I think just from the get-go, Rocket Genius wanted to be on a private one just to kind of have that ensured consistency of like, I'm the only person using this database server. I know if I was on shared RDS tier, like Paisley would always be looking out and making sure everything was fine and deal with anything. But just like, sort of reducing the odds of some random other application causing problems for you, because this is like a business critical part of their company.
So aside from that benefit, like the noisy neighbor thing, isn't there also some like inspection? We're able to better be able to separate what queries are running and actually get visibility into what's exactly happening on their database, where we can't do that in a shared one? So
the most recent developments with Amazon's Performance Insights feature is actually they brought it first to the Aurora engine, and now you can do it for MySQL and also for MariaDB. And they have it for Postgres as well, but WordPress doesn't run on Postgres, so it doesn't matter. But with the Performance Insights tool, we can actually see the queries that are happening. We can drill it down by database user. We can inspect a certain period of time on that whole timeline. And we had a lot of these tools that we came up with ourselves, like querying the performance schema, or there was stuff that we could query when we were running on MariaDB, but not if we were running on Aurora. So Amazon is actually, they did some cool stuff to give you all that information, regardless of the engine type, all in a web UI. So it's easy for us to parse and see what's going on with the database. Other benefits of having a private RDS is if you want to have external access to your database and you don't want to use an SSH tunnel to get to it, we can set you up with an HA proxy configuration that'll allow a connection to a restricted list of IP addresses externally. And so we only really want to do that if you have your own RDS for security purposes. And it's helpful for other things, like let's say you have a major change coming up and you just want, you have a database dump, you have a backup like that, but you want to just take extra assurances. We can create an RDS snapshot that's just for your data, and we can roll back to that snapshot if we need to. There's the Amazon backtrack feature for RDS, which is really nice because you can literally with a couple clicks roll your database back without having to provision a new RDS and dump the tables out of there and all that stuff. So all the features that you'd be able to do if you're running your own RDS, like Pagely can do that. If you have a private RDS add-on with us, we have access to the same features, and we manage that on your behalf.
Cool. So we've got them on, their own dedicated thing. We've got the database right size. We load tested it, so we're pretty confident at this point. How did that cutover process? Maybe Alex, you can talk about it. How did that actually go? Switching to bringing the licensing server live.
So we brought it live, and initially we brought it live under the RDS medium, against Armand's advice. And we had issues for the first week. It was not catastrophic. It was working most of the time, but there were some outages and there were some issues, and it was not to the point where we were worried and we wanted to roll back. It was to the point that we tried a few different scenarios. We tried to, I don't remember exactly what we tried, but we tried to handle this in a few different ways so that we wouldn't need to upgrade to an RDS large. And after a week of trying a few different things and still having the database kind of have some outages every now and then, I just decided to, let's just go to the large and keep, because what happened was the solutions were starting to get complex, and I really wanted to keep things simple. I didn't want to add any complexity that really we didn't need to. So then I just asked them to just upgrade to the large, which was no problem. To me, it was just like a click of a button. It happened. And then since then, we never had any issues.
Cool.
Well,
awesome.
Until this year, but I'm sure we're going to get there.
Yeah, we're slowly getting there.
Yeah.
So it looks like the next thing that happened about a month later, there's a ticket around disabling Xml-Rpc. And so presumably this is on that security topic. You guys wanted to lock things down. It looked like you were using security firewall, and this Armor thing that you were using at Firehose, it sounds like, was also being used. So what do we do there? Maybe Armand, can you talk a little bit about what we did for that?
Which one are we looking at?
This is 11/27/17. And I think it involved basically blacklisting all of the internet, but they still needed Jetpack to work. And so it looked like we were able to just whitelist Automatic's IP block.
Sorry, I'm just taking a look through the ticket really quick.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe while you're doing that, so Alex, can you maybe explain for the people who aren't familiar with XML-Rpc, what is that?
So I am also drawing a blank on that ticket. Sean, can you give me the number again?
Oh, sure. It's ticket 107-722.
It was on Carl's account, so you might not be able to see it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it looks like you're having some random botnet hitting the XML-Rpc endpoint for your sites, and we placed a rule to just block all of it at first, and then we followed up with an update to that rule to allow the Jetpack IP ranges. And
Jetpack is an automatic service. It basically enables a lot of different things, and it connects remotely. And so this is like the endpoint that it needs to connect to be able to do its thing. I think specifically you guys were using VaultPress, which is their backup system.
Yeah, so it looks like that remote procedure call was getting abused, I guess, getting attacked, and we didn't need it, for anything else other than apparently Jetpack. And honestly, I wasn't really involved on that. I don't think on that request, so I didn't even remember it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a pretty routine type of request for us. This kind of thing happens pretty much every day for different customers, and we do some stuff to block, or it's not really to block, but to shortcut that whole 405 return code for gets. Because if you try to do a get to XML-Rpc.php, WordPress itself, the application will return a 405, and it'll say only post requests are accepted for XML-Rpc. But that whole transaction actually takes CPU resources to run, and it can use up your PHP workers if there's a lot of it happening. And actually, we've been noticing in the last 6 or 8 months, there's all kinds of random things out there on the internet just doing gets to XML-Rpc. I think they're trying to do it as a DDoS. So we added some virtual patching to sort of just shortcut that whole process. So it still returns a 405 for a get, and it still says only post requests are accepted, as you would expect WordPress to return. But it's a good performance fix. But yeah, if you ever need XML-Rpc blocked, we can obviously block it entirely. And if you ever need Jetpack allowed for that, then we can do that as well. It's pretty easy for us to do.
Cool. All right, moving on to April of 2018. I think this is where we hit some scaling challenges. So there were some 503 errors happening, it looks like, due to a memory limit. And I don't know, Armand, are you familiar with this one? This had to do with the monitoring. So they were monitoring the homepage, and it sounds like that was creating like unnecessarily load instead of using the monitoring endpoint.
I don't think the monitoring checks were causing the memory errors, but it just wasn't helping the situation in general. The whole point of monitoring your application is to see if it's actually running, right? If it can respond to a request, if it can connect to the database. If you're using an object cache, is the object cache working? So we actually have a custom monitoring endpoint on every Pagely site. It's /Pagely/status. And if you point your monitoring to that, you're going to get more consistent and more reliable results versus hitting the home page. If you hit the home page, then you're either just hitting a cache page, and you may not even see if there's an underlying problem with your PHP pool. Or if you're sending a cache busting header or a cache busting query parameter, for every request, which is what we were seeing in this case. There was like the security anti-cache equals some long number. Every time it was a different number. That's going to be invoking a dynamic render for your homepage. And different sites have different things happening on their homepages. It could be actually a lot of overhead to serve an uncached copy of your homepage. Especially if it's a monitoring system, they might be doing pings from multiple places. Could actually get a stampede of requests trying to all hit your homepage uncached. So that's why we have the Pagely status URL, and that's working through one of our page management must-use plugins. So it's always going to be there unless you uninstall it, which we don't recommend doing because we'll just reinstall it for you. But that endpoint will check to see if the gateway is running, if the PHP is executing properly, if it can do a option select on your database, and if you're using an object cache, like with our Redis object cache drop-in, it will tell you if that's working properly as well. So I'm actually sure, I wasn't personally involved on this ticket. I'm not sure if the 503s they were seeing here was because of that, or if there was something else going on, and maybe this was just contributing to it. But okay.
But that's a good lesson takeaway, that don't use the home page as a monitoring, because it's not necessarily going to catch things like, is the object cache working, and it's also going to create a bunch of just unnecessarily like PHP. It's going to suck up the PHP workers.
You could potentially DDoS yourself. Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue.
503s are generally, you get those if the backend servers are at capacity. If your PHP workers are full, or if you're using Apache mode, then Apache itself is totally full of requests and it can't handle anything more. Or it's hitting like the Nginx connection limits in Nginx only mode. But yeah, that's kind of, we're there to just look through it and help you figure it out. I think the end result recommendation we made in that ticket was to grab a New Relic trial. New Relic APM has a lot of good transaction tracing. So you could actually go and see the various steps in a web transaction, and you could see if maybe there's some infinite nesting going on, maybe something is allocating more memory than it should because of a flaw in the code. But if someone ever needs legitimately more memory allocated in PHP, it's a VPS. Every customer has their own resources, so we have no problem adjusting that on a case-by-case basis.
Cool. Well, I wonder almost, because it's a good segue, a month later, they did get a DDoS, it looks like. There was a bunch of different agents hitting it, and it seemed like they was trying to brute force passwords. So what we did there, it sounds like, is basically look through the logs and just gave them a list of the ones that they were trying to brute force. And then, Alex, you guys can then handle that however you think is best, reset their passwords or contact the people that have the attempted compromises.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, so WordPress out of the box doesn't make it incredibly easy to get that kind of paper trail. But this is actually a tool our CTO, Josh Eichhorn, made that cross-references some stuff in the access logs and pulls some stuff out of the user meta in WordPress to let you see if a certain IP address has had any recent sessions for any of the users installed on the system. And then we can generate a report that shows you what IP, what user, what that user's role is, and that can usually help a lot if you're trying to deal with potential breach, like maybe someone has some malware on their computer and it was able to execute something to try to get into a website, and then it goes from there. So. Or it could be, some unpatched vulnerability if it's an old plugin, or something like that. There's a million different possibilities for how something could initially get into an account. But getting that data back out, like I said, WordPress doesn't actually make that super straightforward. So sometimes you got to know really the inside plumbing of it to be able to extract that kind of data.
Yeah, so Alex, that seems like one of those instances where had you been at Firehose on that, there's no chance they would have been doing that type of thing, to that level.
Yeah, they wouldn't be. No, they wouldn't be proactively telling us what's going on. So the big thing for us were all the admin accounts. So we just got all the administrator accounts and made sure everyone had a strong password.
Cool. All right. Well, so I think we got about 10 minutes left, and there's 5 tickets that I see here left, so we'll kind of quickly run through those. It looks like a month later we caught an infinite loop. It sounded like just maybe a configuration issue on your side that crept in, and it from what I took from that ticket, it was like a redirect that was happening from HTTP was forcing them, or no, HTTPS was forcing the HTTP, but then it was bumping them back to HTTPS. So it was like,
yeah, there was a period where we were making, and that's the one of the cool things about working with you guys is that a lot of times we're making changes and we make a mistake and you guys see it before we see it. Even though we were right there making the change. Like, okay, we made the change, we deploy something, and then Paige is like, hey guys, there's something going on here. I'm like, okay, I guess I screwed something up.
Well, that's like someone riding shotgun, I guess, as you're driving the car, right? You're just like, do you want to go that way?
Yeah, they caught us again.
Our point of view is like when something like that, our admin on call is sitting there and like, maybe nothing's happening, maybe there's a lot of things happening, and then we see an alert like that, and like, okay, well, it looks like they're doing something, so that's somewhat of a relief, It's not like something else broke.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Cool. So that was an easy fix. I thought what was interesting about that one, because you guys actually fix it. We just alerted you to it, and then you fix it right away. But then I think the interesting thing about that one, from what I took from that ticket, was Armand, you did something extra just to make sure that the cache was cleared, because there was some kind of thing that was compounding it where it would have been like 30 days potentially in people's browser cache.
Yeah, so 301s are really hard to shake off everywhere. Obviously, you can clear the server-side cache, and it won't be returning a 301 in response anymore. But the client-side browsers will cache the 301 pretty aggressively. You'd have to go and actually go clear your cache, or kill your browser, reopen it, clear the cache again, maybe a couple more times, then it'll stop doing that redirect. So I'm not sure. I don't think we did much, I'm not sure we even could do much for the browser side caching, but we did make sure that the cache on the server was completely purged, and that eventually got better because it's not an issue today.
Cool.
Max age was set to like a year.
Right on. All right. Okay, a couple weeks later, you guys added Discourse. So this is, I love that system, by the way, the forum system. Discourse, for the people that are listening that aren't familiar with it, this is a really neat forums. I think the best thing out there for doing forums. But it is not a WordPress app. It's its own standalone app. And you guys wanted that to run in a subdirectory, I think, for SEO purposes. We do something similar with our own site, and we have a knowledge base, which is a totally separate WordPress instance running in a subdirectory. And I think what's interesting here is, Armand, maybe you can talk a little bit about reverse proxy and the different ways to accomplish this. But they did something a little different than reverse proxy.
Yeah, so a reverse proxy is basically a way to make it look like two different websites are working together. So like, if you're hosting domain.com somewhere and you're hosting domain.com/forums somewhere else, typically you'd have to either run it as a subdomain because of how DNS works, or you'd have to use a reverse proxy to make that /other thing be served by a different place. And so depending on where the host is in that process, it's either going to be an incoming reverse proxy or an outgoing reverse proxy. Most of the time, our clients are doing an incoming reverse proxy, whereas they have their DNS pointed somewhere else from Pagely, and they want to send a subdirectory like /blog to Pagely. And so we offer that type of support. It's with an add-on, and that basically gets you access to one of our DevOps engineers. We'll work with you on the onboarding. We'll collect all the details, make sure that it's working securely, and that it's properly monitored on an ongoing basis. The other type of reverse proxy, which is what Rocket Genius needed, was an outbound reverse proxy, whereas they're pointing DNS at Pagely, and they wanted /forum going out to Discourse. And so we support that type of configuration as well. And it's essentially, the same amount of work for us to do that versus an incoming one. Generally, if you're doing reverse proxying, there's a couple of important things that you need to do. Is you have to configure the IP address ranges. If it's an incoming one, you have to specify which IPs are going to be sending that traffic, as those will be the designated IPs that are authorized to send an X-forwarded header to say what the real visitor's IP is. And that's important so that all the other parts of our system, the rate limiting and the access control and all these things can work properly, so that we can actually know what the real visitor's IP is. And then the other important thing is making sure to send the right host name, and that applies if it's an incoming or outgoing one. Discourse expects a certain host name that may be different from the actual domain name. You may be hosting your website as one name remotely, and you're proxying it to Pagely to an app named something else. So the host name is the other important part. And then, of course, making sure you have the right scheme. If your remote proxy is HTTP only, then we have to send as HTTP. We can support HTTP or HTTPS, obviously, but that's one of the other important details to make. So,
so the net result of that, though, is that they're able now, using this completely non-WordPress app, Discourse, but to have it exist in a subdirectory and look as if it's running, under, there's just a folder in their website, right?
Right. Instead of having to create like forum.gravityforums.com and then have that be served by Discourse directly, they have gravityforums.com/forums, and it's a more seamless kind of experience. It's better for SEO as well. And it's just a little bit of reverse proxy magic stuff, which we use Nginx, and we have our own gateway layer that's built using OpenResty, which is a software bundle based on Nginx. So with Aries, we can make all these rules a lot more easily. We can specify what upstreams we want to have. We can match on conditions like the URL or the user agent, and we can create actions like send to this other upstream. So, you know, it's, even if you're using something else, if you're using Apache, you know, you can do the same kind of stuff with Apache as well. But generally, our reverse proxy implementations are done in Nginx.
Nice. And Alex, how do you guys like Discourse? I'm just curious.
We like it. We like it. We are not getting as much traction as we would hope for in our new forums. We had an old forum that it was very popular. You know, when we launched Gravity Forums, we offered support via our forums, and obviously that forum became very popular because that was the one place people would come to get support from us. But it became to a point that we had so many customers. It was hard to manage support in that system. So we had to shut that forums down and provide support, via Help Scout. That's what we do now. It works great for us. And Discourse was, us bringing back the forum, but bringing it back as a community forum. So, to basically, an attempt for us to kind of bring, the Gravity Forums community together. So, developers can talk and users can ask questions to other users and ask questions to other developers. And so we're still in the phase of, growing that, forum. We do love the software. I think it's working great. We're just kind of, in the process of getting it popular. Cool.
Yeah, in terms of the forums I've used, I really do think that theirs has the best UX of just about any that's out there. So I'm just curious to hear how you guys find it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think in the interest of time, we'll just do one more here and then wrap up. So there was that final ticket, Armand. It's the one that's on 2.4.19. It looks like unoptimized query calls to a Gravity Manager plugin. Let's see. And do either of you guys know offhand about that one? Performance issues in February, it would have been,
so the performance issue in February, that's the latest performance issue that I was talking about. So we, everything was great after we migrated until February. We started seeing some outages, and I was getting a little worried because, our user base is growing and growing and growing. And I was worried that we were hitting some sort of limit. And so I reached out, or maybe you guys reached out or something. We started talking, what can we do? I was like, okay, do we need to upgrade to an RDS? Is there an RDS bigger than what we have? Do we need to upgrade? What do we need to do? And then, and that was, the cool thing about PageLee again is it's, if you talk talk about this with another hosting or maybe somebody that's not as detailed, they'll just say, yeah, let's just upgrade to a larger RDS. It's going to solve the problem, right? Yeah, it's probably going to solve the problem, but it's going to cost a lot more. And then Page is like, no, hey, the problem is not the RDS. The problem is there's some blocking queries here that are blocking something else. And, I noticed that not the character set, Armand, what I'm trying to do, the
collation?
The collation of one of the tables was wrong, or was not wrong, but it was not a collation that's optimized for, these collisions. And then, we suggested that we change the collation of these tables, and we scheduled a short maintenance window, and we changed the collation, and then boom, solve the problem. So, something that would have, this type of problem would have been a big problem if you're talking about a hosting that is not willing to go in there and dig and find a specific reason why you're having an issue. And, you guys were able to do it. And here we go. Everything works, perfect. Again, without, any upgrades or without any big, I did go back and there were some queries that needed to be optimized. I went back in there and optimized a few things, but really the gist of the problem was, hey, the collation is wrong. If we just update the collation, it's going to behave better, and the locks are going to be, less of a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. So being in sales, I get to bump into the people that are coming from other hosts and hearing their issues. And this type of thing on any other hosting provider, or one in particular that I'm thinking of, it's a perfect opportunity for them to say, oh, no, you need more hardware. We got to double or triple your spend on your hardware, right? It's a chance for them to bump things.
Right.
We operate a little differently. We want to solve what that root problem is, because it actually, in the long run, it's just easier to support. We're invested in your success. We want you guys to not be always going down and, creating support tickets. So I think this is a great example of that in that what could be papered over with a Band-Aid just by getting bigger hardware. No, we're going to try to really figure out what is that root cause and address it.
Yeah, and like there's some problems that more hardware is not going to solve. There's just some situations where like it's the query is just fundamentally doing it wrong.
Right.
It's not really something you can solve. We actually, my team, the DevOps team, spends a lot of time working on customers' cases like this, where we could very easily just say you need to buy a bigger RDS, or you need to buy a bigger VPS, and just make more money. But we actually spend a lot of time trying to drill into these issues and get to the bottom of it. It's like increasing hardware is really a last resort. You don't want to increase hardware. It's kind of wasteful. You're spending extra money. You're sort of papering over inefficiencies, and we really pride ourselves on helping our customers make those decisions soundly. Like, really exhaust all those different factors and see, like, do you really need an RDS extra large? Do you really need 4 times the hardware for your VPS? Maybe you don't. Maybe you just need to do a couple things differently. And you may, you may spend a little extra money for your developer to do that in the short term, but in the long term, your ongoing hosting costs are going to be lower.
Right.
I think what's also interesting is, like, just IP value wise, this follows, if, heaven forbid you guys decide to go to some other host, but this fix follows with you, because you've now, otherwise if it wasn't a fix, then the problem's going to exist wherever you take it. So It's just nice. It's essentially IP that's valuable to the company. So cool. Well, guys, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Alex, is there anything you want to add, or like, what would you say, having been a long time, you've been with us for 5 years now, what would you say to someone investigating Pagely?
Well, I honestly, I have nothing but the best things to say, about Pagely. And it was funny because initially I was the one that was hesitating about the move to Pagely. And it was interesting because it was because of support. I wasn't sure if I was getting the right support in the beginning, but something happened on Pagely that completely, there was like a completely changed the gears, and support really stepped up to a level that impresses me every time that I have to, every support ticket, every interaction that I have. And that's not just with Armand. Armand is excellent, but I've interacted with a bunch of other, support engineers, and they all solve problems. They all go straight to the problems. And I haven't had, I remember my nightmares of finding the wrong, finding the wrong support guy. I was like, man, I just hit the wrong support guy. And you just go through loops and loops and loops, and that you have the wrong guy. That's not going to solve the problem. There's nothing you can do. You don't hit those guys on Pagely. You get the right guy, and he's there. He's going to fix it. So really, I have nothing but very good things to say, and it's mostly because of support. Support is to a level that's really impressive.
Cool. Well, we're happy that you guys are continuing to grow, and we hope to be there for a long time. And thank you so much for taking the time, both of you guys.
Very good.
Right,
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.